Oh, welcome, Lisa. Welcome back. Thanks for coming back on.
Pleasure.
So, this is Lisa McKimm from Parenting Works, and I'm Michelle Pete, and we're here to talk a little bit today about Lisa and what she can do for families, her work with families. And last time that we met, and the link will be below if you want to see our last time that we had to chat about Lisa's mahi or her work. You talked about family coaching. And this time I understand that you'd like to talk more about some work that you do with havening with families.
I'd love to talk about havening because so few people even know what it is.
Yeah.
Even professionals that I speak to, it's still relatively new and they haven't heard of it. I love it for so many reasons, but the key reason is it allows people to be free of past trauma and being haunted by that, or immobilized by that. And it's such a painless and a fast way to do it.
And you've seen this as an effective tool to use with the work that you do with families and parents and their children.
Yeah. So it you can use it for so many different things. I mean, anxiety would be one of those things, and I talked about anxiety in the last video call that we did. But I've used it for fear of dogs with one little person, and I'm able to share that story fully because Evie is one of my grandchildren, and her mum is really happy for this to be shared. She was absolutely terrified of dogs after a nip on the ankle from a dog. She would just about climb curtains if she thought that a dog was coming anywhere near her.
Mm.
She used to get out of the car and go into parks in case there were dogs in there. Uh, if somebody was, you could be taking her to a fantastic day out, but if she thought there was a dog going to be there, she would refuse. So it was massive for her. And I was just training at the time. So Evie was my first practice go. And I thought, oh, if it's a disaster, I'm not going to feel terrible about it. It's worth a go. But what happened blew us all away. So I said to Evie, I'm going to show you what havening is. And for, in a nutshell, havening is one person, like the person who's in my role, talks. While you can either both do together or the other person does on themselves a certain um, range of actions with their using their hands on their face, on their arms, and on their hands against each other. And it sounds too simple, like how could that possibly make any difference? To be honest, when I first heard about it, it reminded me of that story about the emperor's got no clothes. I felt like I was being tricked into believing something that couldn't possibly be true. But the reality is, it's amazing. So I said to Evie, if you've got these 10 balls and you're going to show me how afraid of dogs you are, move how many balls out of this bowl into that bowl. And she picked 7, and I thought 7 was a bit low considering I'd seen her response to dogs. But she's the one who was in charge. By the way, she was 5.5. So she put 7 balls across. So I did one round of havening, which takes about 7 minutes with her. And I said, now if you think about dogs being in a park when you go there, how many balls worth of being afraid would that be? And she cut it down to 5. And then she cut it down. We did another round, and that was with 15 minutes in, and she cuts it down to 2. And then I say, well, would you like to do one more, and we'll see if we can get rid of those last 2? And she said, no, it's all gone now. And I thought, I think her TV program's coming on, and she wants to go and watch. So I thought, oh, darn, I would have liked to have had that last go. But she said to me, I know when it's gone, I know my own body. I thought, wow. So anyway, after they left here that day, they'd gone to what we know as the pink park because lots of the playground equipment is pink. And her mum rang me from there and she said, I don't know if it's to do with that thing that you just did with her, but we've gone to the park and there is a dog tied up to a tree. And she just gaily said, get my bike out of the boot. I want to have a ride around. So her mum said, I don't know if she could see that dog was tied up or not, but I could, so I felt all right about it. But she got on her bike, got on the biking path, biked straight past the dog without giving it a second look. And 4 days later, they went and house sat for somebody who was leaving their dog in the house. And they sent me a video of Evie lying on the bed with the dog kissing its head.
What?
I know. So imagine me as my first go at that ever.
Yeah.
Whoa, it was,
What just happened here?
I know. So I that was what sold me straight away. So I was like, right, I'm going to finish this training and add this to my kitty of things that I can do and the work that I do. And I've used it for lots of people now, and they're all blown away by the power of it. Like, for instance, I had a 13-year-old boy in here last week, and he's had 2 years out of school because of his anxiety. And so he was just wanting some havening to sort of make sure that we'd, given him a tune up, really. And I said to him, do you ever get feelings that you're worried about your family dying? And he goes, no. And I said, well, you know that when you first came in, that was one of your biggest fears all day long and all night long. You worried that your family could be in an accident, they could catch COVID. So he just dreamt of catastrophes day and night. But when I told him that, he just was like almost laughing about it. And he said, I don't even remember being scared about them dying at all. And I said, well, that's the beauty of havening, isn't it? It just completely retires old triggers for fear that are based in some thought or some event that you had where you felt completely powerless. And that's the beauty of what I've enjoyed learning about while bringing havening on board, is realizing that trauma isn't an event. We'll often say I was in a car accident, it was so traumatic, but it's not the event that's the trauma. It's the feeling alone and unsupported after the event that creates a trauma trigger. So if most of those trauma triggers can be retired once you've got through the event and you've recovered, they're no longer useful to you. So, for instance, a kid who grew up in a violent home, say their dad was the violent one, it could be that now the sound of a car wheels driving in on gravel, because that would mean dad was home. That sound is a trigger for kids to feel fearful. And they can be a 45-year-old man, but still that sound triggers them. Or it could be the smell of the soap that he always used in the shower. Lots of weird little things will trigger us. And havening just retires those triggers.
So you're working with some talking therapy and alongside havening, or is it just they come for havening only, or?
It depends. I'll decide quite quickly on what I think will help them the most. So for some people, you definitely get the feeling that they need to pour their story out and they want to. But with havening, there is none of that. You don't need to retell the whole story. And for some people, that's excellent, because maybe they've had counselling and they're not feeling better, and they think, I've talked and I'm sick of telling my story. Or maybe they are introverts and don't enjoy, or it's stressful for them to share their story. So it's really on a case-by-case basis on how I choose to approach it. But the thing that I'll always do is bring them into that conversation and tell them why I think we should start with one or the other and get their agreement on that as well.
So is it effective on adults and children, or?
It sure is. I said Evie was my very first client. Well, my second one to this day is still the most mind-blowing client I think I've ever had. She's given me permission to share the story, although I won't mention her name. But she had come from super tough life, terrible things that happened to her along the journey. And there wasn't just one set of triggers. She had a body full of triggers. And she'd come to deal with the sense of betrayal that she had. So we started working on that, and new bits were coming up, and it was really, we were seeing some amazing things. And then suddenly she randomly said to me, "My osteo tells me that I should learn how to fall in love with my arm." And I thought, where did that come from? And so I said, what do you mean by that? She said, well, I have this problem with my arm. It's been a serious pain forever. Um, it's excruciating. It blocks me from enjoying my life. I asked her what the pain level was out of 10, and she said 15. She often lay on the bed, put her weight on the arm to try and make it go numb because it was so painful. And I asked her, why did she think her body had disabled her arm? And it was just silence for a second, but I could tell there was something dropping into place. And she said, I know why. She said, I often tell people that I wanted to kill myself when I was a teenager, but I never told them about the time that I actually tried to attempt that. And I took the gun from my dad's cabinet, went to the back of the farm. I'd used that gun before, but no matter how many times I tried to pull the trigger, I couldn't seem to find the strength in my hand to do it. So after struggling for half an hour, I went back home and put the gun back. And I said to her, wow, you've been really hating on this arm. You've had 3 operations on it and multiple cortisone injections. But the way that you've talked to me about it today, you really hate it. You almost wish it could be amputated. And it saved your life. And you've hated it in return for doing that. I just saw the colour change completely in her head. And she said, and we were havening the whole time that we were having this conversation, right? Stroking her face and stroking her arms and stroking her hands. But halfway through, I'd noticed that she developed a new pattern of doing this hand movement. I said, did you realise that you've only been havening your left arm for the last 5 minutes? And she said, no. She said, it's so weird. I can almost feel something tingling in my arm, like life's flowing back into my arm again. And by the time she left at the end of that session, all the pain was gone in her arm. And she's now probably around late 40s. She'd had that pain constantly since she was a teenager. So this mind-body connection and havening, being able to step in and so effortlessly release people. What was also amazing for her is she went home and messaged me that night, and she said, I'm diabetic and that I've been given a limited lifespan, and my readings are up around 30 every day. And she's works with a clinic that the little machine Bluetooth all of her results through to. So she did her daily test in the evening after she'd been here, and she said, I'm never much under 30, and tonight I'm 12. And I said, what do you think that's about? She goes, I don't know, but it's got to be connected somehow because I haven't been 12 for years. So I said, well, let's not count our blessings before, let's just see how that is tomorrow. We tracked that for the next month, and it stayed between 8 and 12 every day. And she knew the answer. I would never have known the answer. That's diabetes is not my field of expertise, but she's dealt with it a long time. And she said, my whole life, I've been in a state of fight or flight, which means that my cortisol has been high all the time. And when your cortisol is high, you have high blood sugars because your body's getting ready to take off or fight. So I was amazed, and nobody sings louder about havening than she does. She's just, we've had a lot of other things as well, but for me, I'm never going to forget that case.
There's so many things about that story that just blows my mind.
I know.
To start with, how you said something like, why did your body disable your arm? I mean, where did that question come from?
Sometimes I might work with the unseen. I'm not sure where that comes from.
Totally. That is not the normal kind of conversation you'd have, eh? So it's all part of that beautiful healing and support, the work that you do. It's all kind of worked in there nicely by the sound of it, Lisa.
You know, and I might refer to that as intuition, and I don't want to give it labels, but I never think that I'm working alone. You know, there's always a team around anybody that I'm working
Yeah.
with. So yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind how it works. I don't even need an explanation. It's a bit like the fact that I'm quite happy to turn the switch on the wall on to get light in my room. I don't need to know how the electricity was made. I just know that it turns up and that it creates good things. And I feel the same about the other stuff in my work. You know, I
Wow.
appreciate it. I feel incredibly lucky to be in a position where I can support people like that. You know, it's life changing. And because it changes other people's lives, it changes mine. It's the most satisfying way to do work.
So you do family coaching and you bring in havening as you sense that it's needed.
Yep.
And is this with any age group within any family, or can individuals come as well? Or
Anybody comes in for havening. Doesn't have to be a family issue. It can just be a life issue that, you know, feels like a struggle and that you want to put behind you.
okay, cool. And
Yeah.
is this in person or is it online or both? Or
The amazing thing, you can do havening online with people. You know, you can work internationally with people. It still works. So either they can come in to see me or we can do it online.
and when you talked about the touching, is that them touching themselves
There
or
is
you?
ways, right? So the way that I actually got shown in my training was that it's my hands on my client. But I also heard that you don't have to do that with people. You can demonstrate it and they can sit across from you and copy it. That's my preferred system for a lot of reasons. If somebody has had sexual abuse in their past, they're often very nervous about anybody else's hands being on them. If somebody has got anxiety about germs, they won't even put their own hands on their face, let alone want anybody else's hands on them. Plus, I feel that that second story I told you about my client who had suddenly started only havening her one arm, we
Mm.
never would have got that if I was the one who was havening her at the time. I prefer it that way, and you know we're having beautiful success with it. So that's the way we do it.
That's so incredible. So people are going to go and find out about havening now, but they can also contact you if they want to find out some more, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll put your contact details below. It's Lisa at parentingworks with an x.co.nz.
Yep.
That's your email, and then you've got your parentingworks.co.nz website.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you wanted to just leave people with one or two things to think about in regards to havening with their families or themselves,
Yeah.
what would you like to leave them with?
Well, first of all, I think I would say the greatest thing about havening is that it offers you hope when you might have given up. Some people have struggled with stuff and been to see people and tried things and just feel like it didn't work for them. So I've seen a lot of those people. You know, when something is new and looks kind of, can that really be a real thing? It's often the really desperate people who take it because they'll try anything at this stage. They've tried everything else. I would love it if it comes online for people way sooner, closer to the beginning, then they don't have to do all that lengthy
Mhm.
stuff. It doesn't replace all other things, but it will remove those big triggers, which are the things that shut you down and make life just so hard. So I would say there's a sense of hope that maybe people haven't had before. I would say you might love it because it's so gentle, because you don't have to rehash your story and tell it all. I would just say something like, okay, so you come to see me about an incident with your uncle. Uh, it's about this topic. Well, you just run that memory in your mind. The moment that you remember being most painful, just run it in your mind and give me a score out of 10. how difficult that was. And that's all the talking that they have to do about it. So for people who just think I just can't bear to tell that story, or I can't bear to tell it one more time, that's perfect for them. So optimism in the sense of hope, gentle, and it's gentle on the human being because they don't have to keep revisiting the trauma of it. And that's probably all I need to say really about that. Yeah.
Well, I know from knowing you for over 20 years that when you bring something into your work, you do so with great thought and care. So, yeah, if you're finding this to be a good thing for people, I totally do talk all that. I say, yes, it must be good. It must be good for people because that's the place that you come from.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Such a pleasure talking to you about it. I love it so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking about some of the work that you're seeing and the healing that you're seeing happen through the work that you're doing with families.
Awesome.
And we'll put your contact details down below. And yeah, have a lovely evening.
Thank you, honey. Always good to talk to you.
Ka kite ano.